Dave, after game 3 of the DS, you guys are down 2-1 with your season on the line. It could get really dark for a lot of teams there. And I remember you saying that you believed in those guys in that room. It might have looked different on the outside, but what do you think they proved to each other over the next 10 days?
I think they proved to themselves how tough they are. I think that when you get in a position that we were in against a division rival, against a very talented team at that point, it turns into a street fight. And it's, lose and go home, or you just fight like heck. And I think that that's what got us over the top in the DS, and also what bled into the fact, allowed us to finish these guys off in six games.
We'll go to Jeff in the middle here, fourth row.
Dave, just what do you think of the trajectory Tommy Edman has been on from not even playing a game till August to being the NLCS MVP here?
It's a crazy trajectory. I can't say enough about the front office being able to acquire him at the deadline. What he can do for us on the field, in the clubhouse, it's just amazing. And I never imagined, once we acquired him, he'd be hitting fourth in a postseason game. But I trust him. The guys trust him. He's made huge defensive plays for us and had huge hits. So I just very, very fortunate to have a player like Tommy.
Go to the third row on the right.
Hey, Dave, I know you're being second guessed on all your decisions all the time, and I'm just wondering how you kind of block out the noise, especially on a daily today where you got to make a bullpen game, and every pitching change carries the weight of the world, at least as far as the fans are concerned.
Number one, I don't do social media, so that's the start for me. Number two, I just think that I've got to make decisions, bet on players that I feel, are capable, or put them in the best position to have success, and be willing to live with whatever consequence. And so tonight, this series, this postseason, I've had a lot of clarity, and the players have made me look really good.
Couple more for Doug.
Hey, Dave, with the season Chris Taylor's had, what can you say about him coming in a game like this and delivering?
You know what? I can't say enough about Chris. He's obviously had a tough season as far as the health, the consistency with the bat. But I think it's just one of those things, and when you're talking about the postseason, sometimes it just comes down to just betting on a person. And the moment's never going to be too big for him. He's going to be prepared. And he showed out and had some big hits, some big plays, a big sack bunt today, and he's won a lot of big games for us.
And then what's the message moving forward? Is it just 4 more wins?
That's it. Obviously, we're going to celebrate tonight, as we should. I think the whole world was looking forward or hoping for this potential matchup, this showdown. It's going to be great. They're a very talented team. But I think for us, it's kind of, one game at a time, but appreciating the fact that we still got, 4 wins to take care of business.
Go to the second row on the left.
Can you just talk about Max Muncy's performance just throughout the CS?
Max has been... He's a postseason player. I think that there's a lot said about what Kike does in the postseason, but Max is a guy that throughout his postseasons with us, he finds a different gear as well. He's an on-base machine. He controls the strike zone, and for him to pivot from third base to first base, which he hadn't played in a few years, also speaks to his ability and his talent. And it's not easy to make up for a loss of Freddie Freeman, but Max has been able to help us make that transition a little bit easier.
Take one more here in the third row.
So, Dave, you had a 7-4 ball game. Trinan comes in the 8th. I know they tacked on 3 more in the bottom half to sort of ease the burden a little bit. But had it stayed the same, did you have any backup plans if things went south?
That was my only plan right there. So, from the first inning, the first pitch, I had a lot of contingency plans. But at that point, we were going to ride or die with Blake.
All right, thanks, Doc.
And last thing, I just want to congratulate Carlos and the Mets. They've had a tremendous season, and they fought hard, and I just think Carlos does a great job with that club. So, yeah.
Thanks, Doc. We'll see you in a few days.
MLB analyst and former Marlins president David Sampson. And David, what a series this has been. And I feel like I felt so smart when I would say, you know, the first person that strikes first in a game goes on to win that game and by a large margin. But instead, this time around, it was the Mets who struck first and the Dodgers wanted to make sure they retaliated in this one. Just looking at LA's offensive output in this one, what about their bats impressed you most?
Well, their bats have been impressive all season long, but let's talk about what they did today. Yes, they gave up a run in the top of the first, which this series means that's it. Mets win. Yep. That's what happened the first 5 games.
So we thought.
Bottom of the first comes Minaya, who was lights out this postseason. He could not repeat his delivery. He was leaving the ball up. The Dodgers hitters were not fooled. And guess what? The Dodgers answered. Not a shutdown inning for Minaya, a crooked number for the Dodgers. And they scored 2 and were up 2-1 after 1 inning. And the pressure then went squarely onto the Mets because it was clear that Minaya wasn't going to have it. And that changed the entire way Carlos Mendoza had to manage this game. Whereas Dave Roberts knew he was going to get a bullpen game. He was prepared for the bullpen game. And when you see what the Mets had to do with bringing in Diaz in the 4th inning, then Stanek, then Senga, it was an absolute disaster for the Mets because they couldn't find a way to get anybody out. The Dodgers scored double-digit runs again, and they are on their way for their 22nd World Series.
I want to dive more into the Mets outing, but first I want to talk about coming into this game. We had that chat about the Dodgers having to rely on their bullpen in this one, but what did you make of how they performed in this outing?
Well, we talked about what the keys to the game are, and we wanted Ohtani and Betts to perform. We said they had to get on base 4+ times. They did. We said the bullpen had to perform. They did. And the thing about their lineup is we talk about Ohtani. We talk about Betts. How about talking about the trade deadline acquisition? Tommy Edman with a 2-run home run, and on top of that, a 2-run single. He was the catalyst for this. So up and down that lineup, Will Smith contributes, goes deep with a 2-run home run. So we're talking about a lineup that when you get production from the bottom and you've got the top with Ohtani, Betts, and still no Freeman, but Teoscar had a great game, that's a team that becomes unbeatable.
Let's go back to those keys, because we talked about the keys to a Dodgers victory. We talked about the keys to a Mets victory. And when we're looking at the Mets, you talked about scoring first. You talked about that crooked number. Talked about Minaya needing to have a day. Instead, went 2 innings, allowing 6 hits, 5 earned runs. Diaz and Stanek, relievers couldn't quite get it done. You said you wanted to see a big day from Francisco Lindor. But now just looking at how this game came about, what's next for these Mets?
Well, first of all, what's next for the Mets is they're going to fly home, and they're going to fly home with their head high, and here's why. It hurts. Losing the LCS, I've never done it, 1-0 in the LCS, but here's the thing about what the Mets have done. I can't tell you that they're the lovable underdogs with grimace and everything else. They've got the highest payroll in the game, so they're not underdogs. That said, what they did this year to come from so far back, so far under, where their owner was saying they were going to trade players and be sellers at the deadline, to go all the way to a Game 6 in the League Championship Series in what may have been Pete Alonso's swan song as a Met. You have got to give them credit for the season they had and the performance they had and the breakout star, Mark Vientos. If the Mets win this series, he's the MVP of the series. That's how well he performed. But the Mets look at themselves and they have an owner who's willing to spend. They've got a team that has Lindor, who will be the anchor. They have to decide about Pete Alonso. But all those decisions wait. Right now, you're hurting. But then you take a minute to revel in the season you had, and then if you're David Stearns, who is the president of baseball ops, you get back to work, not tomorrow, but Tuesday, getting ready for spring training.
That's why they say baseball's not won in May. Certainly a different story. If you look at just the Mets season as it progressed, certainly there's no moral victories, however, but looking at how they've been able to make it to where they are and perform the way they did, in Vientos also having that big grand slam in Game 2, but falling to the Dodgers in this one. It is LA.